welcome on stage Saara Vauramo, Environmental Director of the City of Lahti. Hi, welcome Saara. Saara has a PhD in environmental technologies, and as the environmental director of the City of Lahti, your role is to manage and develop the environmental responsibility of the city and the whole area, building also positive atmosphere towards the citizens and business enterprises. And Lahti has been doing quite ambitious work in becoming Finland's leading environmental city. Mm-hmm. And you have actually quite also ambitious ideas on how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of citizens. So the stage is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Satu. Well, good afternoon. So, yes, I'm Saara Vauramo. I work as the environmental director for the City of Lahti. And I was wondering some months ago when we got an invitation here to present Lahti, and why are they now very interested about our city? And one of the reasons is that we are right now competing for the European Green Capital 2020. And in case you find something interesting today in my presentation, you may help us with our campaign here using EGCA 2020 and Green Lahti in the Twitter. So, of course, when you start a presentation, it's always a good start to start with the news that completely destroys your argument. From last week, there was media news that from the CO2 emissions from big cities in Finland, saying that majority of the big cities in Finland are doing a lot with climate change mitigation, but Lahti isn't doing as much as the other big cities. Okay, of course this wasn't really a pleasant argument for our campaign, but it brings me kind of two different ideas. It means that all major cities and those some smaller municipalities that are the most ambitious, they are actually doing quite a lot work with cutting their CO2 emissions. And the second point is that old saying, there's a lie and there's a mega lie and then there are statistics. And when you count CO2 emissions, it's very important to know what you are actually measuring. Because from this newspaper, they were listing CO2 accounting, where actually the bypassing traffic is posing a large part of the emissions, and our city is having lots of these kind of emissions from the traffic. But actually, it's very, very difficult to cut emissions from the consumption, and even we are not really measuring those really, really big impacts. So one can really say that there is a lot to do for the CO2 neutrality, even in the cities where the citizens and the city itself is really ambitious. I'm really glad to say that our city council has raised this argument very high in its agenda, saying that they want to be carbon neutral in the near future. And they set the newest city strategy just 1 week ago, saying that our aim is to be a bold environmental city. And today I will try to highlight many of the perspectives of being an environmental city, trying to understand the history behind it and also possibilities that it brings. It's very, very important to have a shared goal. I will talk about mobility transition today, also about circular economy briefly. It's very important that it is a part of the business strategy. And also we need to make complete transformations. In a way, we actually produce energy, but also new innovations that we can bring for instance, for the water production. that we do in our city. So today I will open our path towards carbon-free city and society, but not really claiming that we are not there yet. So our city strategy states that we want to cut 17% of the emissions by 2030 compared to 1990 level. We want to be carbon neutral at least by 2040, but already coal-free by 2020. And Lahti is actually still using quite a lot of coal if you go to energy production. This is a district heating production figures. In 2010, majority of the energy came from the coal. Still, it's roughly half that we use the coal, but within 1.5 years, we will completely cut the coal use. But this isn't really enough yet. So even though we produce half from the renewables and half from sorted energy fuel, we have to do much more for the energy production. So you can see the figures here that when we do those really big investments for the energy production, the CO2 emissions dropped, but actually they bring the importance of the single citizens as a much more important. It isn't enough what a city invests, really. We need to have people on board. So we need to have amply of collaboration for the sustainable transition of the city. So when all the investments on renewable energy production are done, then it's the actions of the citizens and also private house owners that really makes a difference. We have opened up a lot about the urban planning ways and the ways we are doing co-designing processes together with citizens. We have a 4 years model how to do a master planning. This is a way many other cities in Finland have started doing their master planning. So every 4 years when the new city councils start, we also start doing master planning, which enables us to take newest research figures into the master plan. Waste is actually quite small part of the city emissions, but it's really visible for the citizens, and it's a growing global concern. I'm pretty sure that in near future we will start discussing about world without waste at all. It means that we have to turn the waste into a resource. These are figures from our city showing that 10 years ago, half of the waste went to landfills. It's the dark blue figure there. Nowadays, we can utilize 95% of the waste, and only 5% will end up to landfills. But this isn't really enough yet. We have to find more and more ways to use waste as an energy. When you do a good waste sorting system, then you also enable different kind of business logics that can really benefit from that. This is an industrial symbiosis figure from our previous landfill site. So this used to be a landfill area, but nowadays it's a complete industrial symbiosis arena, where actually the public company Päijät-Häme Waste is sort of forming a manager role in there, but there are lots of different private companies that can utilize different waste segments. And the role of the city there it might be that we can be one of the first references for giving possibilities for these players that utilize waste as a resource. I would say that the hottest topic, if talking about climate in Lahti currently, that's the mobility transition. And we are living in the middle of it right now. Lahti was one of the fastest growing city after the Second World War. And one integral part of the growth was a car ownership and car use. This is a picture from our market square. might be 1930s or so, people were really proud of owning cars, and the urban planning was done in a way that it sort of give space for the cars. So it's really a large transformation process that we now are going towards. This is a picture from the Market Square again, some years back. We have been also working together with Demos Helsinki, for instance, doing refurbishment projects in those buildings there. But one of the core issue there is how to utilize the most valuable space, which is the space between the buildings. So this is something that we right now work a lot together with our citizens. One of the key possibilities how to actually make a difference is that we are one of the first cities that will implement a carbon trading scheme. Actually, we are the first in Europe that will ever test this kind of possibility together with their citizens. So after 1 year, roughly, we will launch an application where it's possible actually to sell and buy your carbon emissions, and we utilize that for trying to cut down the carbon emissions from the traffic sector. And definitely this is something that we want to develop together with other cities as well globally. So if you are interested, please contact us later. Well, water is something that is also very much related to climate issues. City of Lahti has been for a long time working with water management issues, but still we can say that we are water protection innovator. This is a picture from our harbour area. Those who have been visiting Lahti and the Sibelius Hall, that's right after there. But this is a picture from 1940s, and our lake was one of the most eutrophicated lakes at the time. But city started to invest on the lake management early in 1980s and 90s, and we actually got a lot of research partners all over the globe, and still Lake Vesijärvi is one of the most studied lake in the world. Also, we took our citizens to be active partners for the project. So it was a major voluntary working program, but it still goes on. And why it's really a climate issue is that this is also a matter of adaptation. So we need to understand the biggest risks, even though we try to cut the CO2 emissions as much as possible. But since the storm waters are one of the biggest, economically biggest risks in the cities in Nordic Europe, we have to make sure that we do the best. And that's why we right now work together with Smart and Clean Foundation and cities of Helsinki, Vantaa and Espoo, trying to find the best natural and technical solutions for treating the storm waters, but also treating the microplastics and different kind of anthropogenic chemicals. And this is something that we do currently. So city, I guess it's always on a transition state. It never will be really ready. And sustainability, it's a core element of all the city strategies that really wants to actually exist in the future. There's a need for us to have more sophisticated tools and models to really count these questions. And I think the cities are the places where new innovations will definitely form. But no one can do these things alone, and that's why I also want to give credits for different kind of networks, and we definitely want to have even more partners for us to work with. So have a really nice afternoon, and hopefully we'll have a nice discussions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saara. So now we'll have time for 1 or 2 questions. Who wants to be the first one to start discussion? here. You will get a microphone from over there.
Hey, about buying and selling your carbon, who wants to buy carbon from someone else?
That's one of the questions that we right now are dealing with. So we have a pioneer group, and we want to test all these things. I think it's going to be an experiment, and for sure we try to build the system in a way that all different partners can really also benefit from that. So if you are able to cut your CO2 emissions from the start until the end of the period, you can also get some credits out of that. So it's also competing towards your own kind of history.
Yeah, relating to the previous question, so will the carbon be, I mean, can it be bought from entrepreneurs or from other citizens, or how does it go?
Yeah, the carbon is counted from, of course, from the city's target itself. So we want to cut 70% from 1990 level by 2030, and then we sort it so that every citizen have their different kind of carbon limits, and so you can really buy and sell from other citizens these credits. Yeah.
Any other questions to Saara? I think this is really revolutionary what you are doing with this carbon trading experiment. Is it really that it hasn't been tested anywhere so far?
There are sort of green credit systems, like I guess in Seoul they have tested something like that, but not really personal carbon trading. And what is quite interesting also there is that we are able to, it's a mobile application which collects this mobility data, and we are able to distinguish if you walk, if you bicycle, if you use public transportation and so on. And what behind it, we can also, of course, build really interesting models for urban mobility using this data. So it's very valuable also for the city to sort of get this more real-time picture.
Absolutely. So make sure you contact with Saara later on, because I'm pretty sure quite many of us are interested to hear how it goes then when you experiment. Thank you once more, Saara.